So you should be able to see my screen in a moment in the presentation mode as well. Okay. So as Valentina mentioned, this is the last workshop of the Implement Conference series. Today we will be talking about the construction sector. And we have three objectives for this meeting to organize this series of workshops. The first one is to gain insights from our keynote speakers, which will outline the transition challenge, the policy landscape, and visions for the transition of the construction sector. We want to explore policy options together with you that we identified already in the course of our project, but we also want to identify collaboratively the strengths and weaknesses of these options. And if you see any missing point, we would also like to collect your ideas and suggestions to improve our work. And the expected outcomes are twofold. We want to acquire actionable knowledge base for choosing between different policy options, and to gain in-depth knowledge of strengths and weaknesses of these policy options in order to pave the way for prioritizing future policy pathways and understanding their implications for governance, industry, research, and society. So this is the welcoming, and then we will go to our keynote speakers. We will have 4 keynote speakers today. And then we will introduce you our Sustrack policy options study. So what we did and what we want to discuss with you will be mentioned during this session. We will open the floor for a very quick Q&A session after the introduction of our work. And then we will start the interactive session in order to discuss strengths and weaknesses of the policy options. And we want you also to suggest alternative policies if you see something that could still be improved. And finally, to share insights on implementing the policies and subsequent effects on the sector. And then we will finalize with the closing remarks. So for the ones who are hearing about the project for the first time, Sustrack reads as supporting the identification of policy priorities and recommendations for designing a sustainable track towards circular bio-based systems. This is a coordination and support action project. We started running late 2022, and this is our last year. So we want to include all the stakeholder inputs in order to improve the work that has been done so far. And just a couple of keywords from the abstract. So we are working on this transition from linear fossil-based systems to circular bio-based ones. And we underline that there is a need for the critical assessment of impacts of both linear and circular bio-based economy. And accordingly, we want to develop policy options, policy recommendations to support the decision makers to develop sustainable pathways for replacing fossil carbon-intensive systems with more sustainable circular and bio-based ones. And if you are not in the list of stakeholders yet, I would like to encourage you to visit our website, social media channels that we use very actively in order to communicate our results, upcoming events. So please engage with us in the activities that are happening right now. And the main objectives are twofold, and we have also 5 specific objectives supporting our main objectives. First, we want to provide knowledge and tools for monitoring and assessing the impacts. So this is going to be the technical part that we are still working on. And finally, we want to identify priorities and define actions to support policymakers. So in order to reach these main objectives, we started with the first specific objective that was to identify, assess, and prioritize the impacts of the linear but also circular bio-based economy. The reports are already on our website, and at the same time we are now developing knowledge and tools for monitoring and assessing the impacts. This is to be delivered by the end of the project. We assessed the impacts of the transition, adopting a case study approach. We just finalized the report, which is to be published soon, also on our website. So we are focusing on 4 sectors. As of today, we are talking about construction, chemicals, textiles, and plastics. We are also using a system dynamic modeling in order to create, simulate, and interpret a variety of scenarios for the transition, which is also almost done. And finally, we want to deliver and identify policy priorities, corresponding policy actions and recommendations. So this is in a very quick way, the introduction of our project. So I would like to leave the floor to the speakers now. In the meantime, I would like to give a very brief introduction for them. We will start with Lorenza. Do you prefer sharing your screen or do you want us to share for you?
I'm ready to share my screen.
Okay, just give me 1 second to introduce you. So Lorenza Romanese is the Managing Director at European Industrial Hemp Association, and she's an experienced policy advisor and communication manager at the European level. So today she will give us the presentation titled as From Vision to Implementation, the Hemp Perspective. We are very happy to have you on board, and I would like to remind you that we allocate around 5 minutes, for all speakers. So for the sake of the time, I would kindly ask you to stick to the time allocated. The floor is yours.
I'm gonna be fast. Good morning to everybody, and again, thanks for the invitation. First of all, who we are and what we defend. We are a trade association representing farmers, processors, and traders of industrial hemp. What's industrial hemp? It's cannabis sativa L that contains very little THC, which is the intoxicating compound, and it's an agricultural crop that can be used in all its parts, but today we're going to focus on construction. We are a company-based association. We count more than 250 members all over Europe. Let's talk about how hemp is the size of industrial hemp in Europe. It's very small. It's a very small crop, but very promising. We have a total surfaces of 50,000 hectares. I gave you a comparison with linen or flax that you might know, that I assume that you imagine that is quite small already. It counts 176,000. We are 1/3, so we are quite small, but we have noticed a sharp increase in the last 10 years, uncomparable with any other agricultural crops. The biggest country producer is France today. In the world, the situation is not better. Hemp is big anywhere, basically. It's a growing market. The biggest market is China, and followed by Europe, where France is dominating clearly with the number of hectares, quite importantly. But hemp was big. It was big in 1940s. We had 400,000 hectares, which start to be a little bit considerable as an agricultural crop. Then we experienced a dramatically decrease in the 60s, and then we have seen back on track with a sharp increase in the last 20 years. And now, as I said before, we are at 50,000. It's quite interesting to ask us why it happened, this struggle from 400 to 10. Basically for 2 reasons. The first reason is that synthetic fiber replaced natural fibers, and then because there is a clear stigma on cannabis/industrial hemp, because the botanical family, it's called cannabis sativa L. We cannot change that. But within the family, the botanical family, we have different species, and the one that we represent does not contain any psychotropic effect. But still. So now back on construction, why hemp makes sense in construction? First of all, because it absorbs up to 10 tons of CO2 per hectares, which can be stored in long-term products like the one for construction. It performs quite well in terms of performances, therefore we can reduce the cost or the energy cost. It's biodegradable and recyclable, so it fully embraces the concept that you were mentioning before about circularity and sustainability. And it has to be grown locally, because hemp needs to be processed in a short period of time or kilometers, 100 kilometers. So it is very hard to do not process this crop locally, which implies the creation of green jobs in rural areas, which is something that Europe needs the most in this moment. The question is why we are not surrounded by hemp. So here are my recommendation, and hopefully you might take those recommendations into action. So we have many problems. So take a note. We can start from point 1. We lack regulatory recognition. Today, we do not have clear standards for hemp, and we are playing with the rules of conventional materials. We do not have ad hoc. It's very scientifically incorrect to compare CRET with hempcrete because they're not performing the same way. So there is an unfair evaluation about the metrics. There are missing parameters like thermal mass or heat capacity that are not taken in consideration, but that are relevant for a bio-based material like hemp. We have a outdated European policy, and I have to admit that as a trade association, we were I wouldn't say disappointed, but we would have expected a little bit more clear message from the European Commission within the bio-based material strategy. We lack funding and we lack investment. Why? Because hemp, as I said, is small, so we need a little bit of financial support and the creation of the value chain. The action, I've already prepared the work for you. So to include hemp in the EU building standards and public procurement, to adapt the certification and the parameters by adding parameters that make sense for different products, namely the bio-based one, not only hemp, provide financial incentives through the research grants, the common agricultural policy supports, and increase the awareness among policymakers and architects and developers. They don't know that hemp is an option. To conclude, hemp is a solution and is now. I'm not talking about something that can come in the future. I'm talking about something that does exist. We need to scale it up, and it's good for the planet, for the people, for the environment. It's very easy. It can decarbonize the construction sector significantly, I would say. Hempcrete is carbon negative at the end of the cycle for the production. So it can reduce waste because it can be biodegradable, and it can support local economies and the creation of green jobs in rural areas. We need more. We need a clear push and an action towards those products that has to be translated in clear policies and action and messages. If you want to know more about industrial hemp, please join us in Berlin in June from the 11th till the 13th. And that's all. I am on time.
Yes, thank you very much. And we look forward to hearing more during the interactive session from your part regarding the policy options.
I have I waste a couple of seconds more. These are not my policies. I'm not in charge of the bottom part of the plants. I'm more in charge of the leaves, the flowers, etc. So I'm replacing Francesco Mirizzi, which is much more knowledgeable than me on that. So I would suggest that if there are questions, so I'm just replacing him on spot, but I have other meetings now. So for any question, we are at your full disposal. Please address us an email if the audience has questions. I really apologize. I cannot stay, but we want to do it for...
Yes, we will follow up. We will follow up if any point comes up for sure. Thank you.
I wish you a fruitful meeting, and thanks again for the invitation. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. So now we move to Alexis. Do you want to share your screen?
Yes, I'm ready to share my screen.
Okay, just give me 1 second to introduce you. So Alexis is the Senior Climate and Environment Advisor at European Panel Federation, advising and representing the industry on climate and environmental topics at the EU level. And he will deliver this presentation titled The European Wood-Based Panels Industry and the Wood for Bauhaus Alliance. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone. So EPF represent as members in about 30 countries in Europe. All wood-based panels types are represented, namely particle board, MDF, OSB, hard and soft board, and plywood. We represent about 100 companies, about 1,000 jobs in Europe, and we have an annual turnover of 25 billion. So we love to present ourselves as a role model industry. We are part of the virtuous circle of the circular bioeconomy. Wood-based panel products are sustainable and made of renewable resource, and they can be used in construction, being long-lasting products that store carbon and can replace energy-intensive and fossil-based alternatives. Wood-based panels can be have different type of uses, mostly in furniture, construction, and packaging. So now I will show you a breakdown of the different type of panels and their uses. As you can see, OSB is the type of panel that is mainly used in construction, together with plywood. Whereas MDF and particle board are used in construction, but mostly for flooring and doors applications. So I wanted to just show this slide as well, because we have these wood fiber insulation panels that have excellent thermal and acoustic properties. They're very easy to be used in fitting for a custom construction, and can be used for walls, floor, and ceilings. So I wanted to talk about today about the product that most of you certainly already know, is the new European Bauhaus that was established by President von der Leyen following a State of the Union address in 2021 in front of the plenary in Strasbourg, when she talked about the opportunity to turn the construction sector into a carbon sink rather than a source of carbon by using bio-based materials such as wood. EPF very rapidly saw the great potential of this initiative, and we decided, together with other wood-based sector umbrellas organization in Europe, to create the Wood for Bauhaus Alliance. That's with CEWIS, woodworking industries, EOS, that's the sawmill industry, EFBWW, that's the trade unions for woodworkers. We are also together with the Innova Wood Network and InnoRenew Center of Excellence. We created this alliance to open dialogue with all stakeholders and in order to maximize the use of nature-based materials and sustainable building system. The main objective of the alliance is to raise awareness, strengthen policy dialogue, and foster innovation in long-lived engineered wood products and hybrid circular design building solutions. So as an alliance, what we do is we prepare position papers, policy recommendations, and we create and we organize events. The last event that we co-organized together with the European with EFI Bioregions facility and the wood policy platform was a full day event in Brussels. It was fully booked. We had a very interesting presentation showcasing the latest advancements in wood-based building design, and we had the opportunity to discuss how the public sector can support bio-based construction to combat climate change. If you share the presentation afterwards, you can have the link to all the presentation. I invite you to go and stream these presentations. You can also go to our Wood for Bauhaus webpage and join the newsletter to keep in touch. So we intend to keep on working with the Wood for Bauhaus Alliance and with the EFI and WoodPop for further engagement, because we know there are things that are coming next in terms of initiatives and policy. So what's coming next? You know that last month the Commission published the Clean Industrial Deal, and that it intends to promote circular business model and accelerate the transition to a low carbon economy. We know that the Commission is finalizing the methodology under the carbon removal certification framework to calculate carbon removals that would include temporary carbon storage in long-lasting products, such as wood-based construction products of a minimum of duration of 35 years and a full monitoring during the whole lifespan. Later this year, there will be an update of the economy strategy that should, with DG Environment, will organize a call for evidence and public consultation very soon. Next year, there will be the publication of the so-called Circular Economy Act, and one of the main points that we know at this stage of it will include high support for secondary raw materials and recycling infrastructures. There will be also European Affordable Housing Initiative and a new European strategy for housing construction. Now the new European Bauhaus sorry, is under the portfolio of DG Environment, and according to the mission letter to Commissioner Roswell, the Bauhaus will now focus on innovation, bio-based materials, circularity, housing, and the built environment. All this looks great, but when we talk about woody biomass, there's always an elephant in the room. According to the data of the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, more than 50% of harvested woody biomass in Europe goes directly for early energy recovery. That's what you see in blue. You see that I don't know if you can see my arrow. So here you have the panel industry, sawmills at Stonewood, and the pulp and paper industry. So it's really in balance because we're talking about a valuable resource, and in this respect, EPF is advocating that at least 60% of the harvested woody biomass should be used for material use. That will ensure better resource efficiency and would be in line with the cascading principle. The cascading principle states that woody biomass should be used according to its highest economic and environmental added value, first for material use, then reuse, recycle, and only at the end, when no other material use is possible, for energy recovery. Now we know that, as you know, certainly the cascading principle is now enshrined into the revised renewable energy directive. But according to the GRC data, we know that the cascading principle is very poorly implemented in EU member states. To conclude, I would like to quote Professor Sharon Huber, chairman of the Climate KAC, the Potsdam Institute, who is no other than the mastermind behind the new European Bauhaus. Wood is too precious to be burned. We are burning the book of life before we have read it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. And I also want to encourage you to stay for the discussions of policy options to provide your insights that I think will be very valuable for us to collect.
I will be staying, sure.
Thank you. So I will move to our next speaker, Buntan. Would you like to share your screen, or do you prefer us to share for you?
Hello, yes, I can share my screen. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, we do. So in the meantime, I'll give a very brief introduction for you. So Buntan is the policy officer at the Directorate General for Energy of the European Commission, covering the environmental impact of constructions, especially the life cycle global warming potential of buildings, where he will also give a presentation with us now. So I will leave the floor to you if you are ready.
I'm just trying to find a button to share my screen. Sorry for that. Yes.
Don't worry. And again, you will have something like 5 minutes. If you can make it in 5, it would be great.
Okay. Hope you can see my screen now.
Perfect. It's coming up now. Yes, here we go.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. Thank you again for your invitations. And my name is Buntan Ia. As mentioned, I'm working at DG Energy. I'm going to start the presentations by quickly remind this the number that we always have in mind from the Commission point of view. Looking at the building stocks, if we look at the number in terms of met square, the new buildings have around 1% of met square persons in terms of building stocks, while we're looking at the emissions. The new constructions is not that negligible anymore. It's present about 15% of the emissions of the building stock in 2020 at least, which is not like the biggest chunk, but a big significant part of the emissions. And it is important that we should take hold, at least at first, these parts of the new constructions to reduce these emissions from the new construction. Which is why in the EPD new recast, we begin to take into account EPD, so the European the energy efficiency for buildings directive. We begin to take into account what we call a whole life cycle emissions of new buildings. which take into account, of course, the first part of the building, the constructions, productions of materials, during the use phase of the building, so the emissions related to the energy use, and when the buildings is needed to replace some parts, so the renovations, and the end of life, how the material or the products are reused, recycled, or put into waste, for example. That is one of the recital that we have right now in the new EPBD recast. As I mentioned before, we take into account the greenhouse gas emissions of the buildings before and after the operational lifetime, so the emissions related to the energy use. And we take into account the whole life cycle emissions of the buildings, and starting with the new buildings. And the idea is to encourage the building designer to choose a better design options, and of course the better choice of materials. Another recital of the EPBDs also mentions a increased considerations of the circular economy, which I assume one of the topics that we are talking today. Here is a quick summary of the main provisions that we have regarding this introductions of whole life cycle calculations of new buildings. So we have on one hand, the Article 7.2 require that large new building must calculate the life cycle global warming potential from 2028, and all buildings need to do this calculation from 2030. The commissions are working right now on a delegated act to set out a union framework, knowing that right now some countries have their regulations and their specific method of calculation, and the idea here is to start considering a common approach, and by the end of the day, not having 27 different calculation methodology, but a similar one at least, so that we can have a consistency in the result and can learn from one to the other in the experience. That is on one side on the calculations, and on the other side, the Article 7.5 also require the member state to publish a national roadmap detailing how they're going to use the limits value for this life cycle global potential of new buildings from 2030. And right now we are at the commissions also working on a guidance to help the member states to produce these national roadmaps and give them some experience, some lesson learned from the countries on how to introduce those limits value. I'm going to not go into detail all the slide. If you want, I can share the word regarding the article that I just mentioned.
That would be great.
And here is the quick timelines of what I've just telling. So May 2024, the adoptions of the directive. The end of this year, we're going to adopt this delegated act regarding the calculation methodology. January 2027, each member state will publish their national roadmap telling how they're going to use the limits value. 2028, the calculation mandatory for large buildings, so over 1,000 meters square. 2030, the calculations for all buildings, plus the introductions of limits value. Here is some detail regarding the works that we have right now. And yeah, if you have any question, feel free to contact the study team or directly to me if you like. And thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much for the very timely presentation. So I would also like to encourage you to stay with us until the end to provide the suggestions and recommendations for our work that has been done so far. And now I will, if you can stop sharing your screen, now we will
Yes,
move
please.
to the next presenter. Let me see. It should be Fernando, no? Is he ready to share? Let's see. Okay, so in the meantime, I will give a very quick introduction. So Fernando is the Secretary General at the European Builders Confederation, defending and promoting construction SMEs and crafts. And he will deliver the presentation titled The Vision of Construction SMEs and Crafts on Resource Use and Waste Reduction.
Good morning. Can you confirm that you can see fully my screen?
It's not in the presentation mode, but we see the presenter notes. So yes, now it's perfect. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. I already heard many things that are very relevant to EBC's work, so I'm very happy for the invitation here. My name is Fernando Sicchos Jimenez. I'm the Secretary General of the European Builders Confederation, EBC. A quick word about who we are. We are an employee organization that was created in 1990 to provide a specific voice of small construction companies, rough trades in construction. So we're based in Brussels. We are a small team of 6, to be honest with you. And why there was this willingness to have a specific voice for small construction companies. And here you have the usual, let's say, summary of what the construction is for the European Union, and in that vision, what the SMEs are for the construction sector. So we know, and for me, the take that you need to take away from this slide is that it's often said that SMEs are 99% of the companies in the construction sector. Reality is that 94% are actually micro companies. So 94% of the companies in the construction sector have less than 10 workers. That's why of the importance to have a specific voice for small construction companies here. I guess you're familiar with the economic societal importance of construction in the European Union. The figures that you see there evolve, of course, but yes, and in any given year, construction is around 10% of the EU GDP. It's around 15 million workers in the sector. Now, the Commission, since last legislature, likes to call it an ecosystem. If you think of a construction ecosystem, we're around 25 million professionals involved in the sector. And in all that world, who EBC represents, on top of particularly represent micro companies, we are present in 16 European member states plus EFTA countries. Our network is comprising more than 300,000 companies, and we know that 90% of that network is actually made of micro companies. You see the links there. And we represent a whole range of different trades in the construction sector. So I won't do the whole list, but it goes really from, let's say, stability works to finishing trades. Okay, a bit more into the topic. I think all people here around are very familiar with the context we are in. I'm trying to make it very general. So we saw a big change in the way legislation and policymakers were considering construction over the last 5 years. We saw a lot of opportunities. So there is, of course, the framework of the Green Deal. There was the initiative of the renovation wave. There is the Fit for 55 package. There are a lot of things, correct? Okay, if we put that in let's say, more vulgarized wording, what we know is that there was a radical change in the perception of the importance of construction that might lead to an increased demand for construction work, especially in the renovation sector. And with this idea, you all know about this saying that we had for 5 years, that we need to enter into a twin transition, green and digital. So that's very welcome. Most of the companies EBC represents are very involved in the renovation market. So those are very positive signs. But at the very same time, you're not unfamiliar with all the crises that we have faced over the last 5 years as well. I won't even go that far as to the COVID period, but all in all, the reality of today is that maybe we're not calling still rising prices of construction products, but high prices of construction products and materials today. We have a very deep shortage of workers. And on top of not having the numbers, we also need to improve the skill sets. So we need people to be more specialized. That's a major challenge. And then one additional layer is that there is still a big gap between the innovation community. There are a lot of things happening for construction out there, and the real application of those on small construction sites, particularly. So we are in a kind of very weird context where we see a lot of potential, but we have very hard, let's say, hard challenges to tackle. Another part of the reality check, this new light on the construction sector, as also reminding people that the reality of the buildings today is that we are not talking in Europe about a lot of new construction. We're actually talking a lot about renovation. The existing building stock is the main target of the whole, let's say, trajectory towards a more carbon neutral Europe. So we understand a bit better now that buildings have not been designed following sustainability, circularity principles. This means that we are facing a lack of information, misinformation on the reality of the building assets and the components of those buildings. Another important layer here is that companies are very dependent on the client's demands. And what we notice is, of course, that there isn't major awareness among EU citizens on all the possibilities that are out there. Even if the professionals, the construction professionals, are not familiarized with everything that is out there, very difficult for anyone here in Europe to be familiar with all the range of options that we have. A little parenthesis in there, just before I go further, I would like to remind that for us as EBC, we have two principles that are extremely important, is the fact that we're material neutral and technology neutral, because the companies we represent are very local, and we consider that they need to be open to all sides, all options that are available to make our buildings more sustainable in their daily operations. Okay, enough about the reality check, as I called it. I will go quickly through the last slides. For us in our organization, we try to consider the whole umbrella of what we consider sustainable materials, sustainable products. Because yes, there is the bio-based focused, of course. We know in France, certain of our members are using bio-based painting, for example. We are ourselves investigating on bio-based insulation solutions through European research projects. But it's still a conundrum that needs to be better specified to the practitioners on site. Because we see that there is still this feeling of uncertainty regarding the consistency of bio-based solutions, the safety of them, but also recycled materials, reusable products. There's still fear, let's say, there's still, let's say, doubts about the performance of those buildings, especially when they're in collaboration with other type of materials, because it's not that the performance of one single component in construction is a data, but what we actually need, it's a mix of different elements, and that is the residual performance is something that we're really still trying to figure out how to tackle. I mentioned already the lack of green and digital skills. This is an ongoing conversation that is broader than bio-based, but it's a very important, and it will be a major challenge for the years to come if we want to make a change there. A bit more technical, we also try to figure out how standardization can help. We have created an organization to represent SMEs in standardization, notably to participate in the technical committees that are more relevant for sustainable construction. So you see a lot of that. But what about the way forward? One thing that you need to keep in mind is that most of construction companies, micro construction companies, are very locally anchored. So when we think of bio-based solutions, we think, oh, great, this will close a bit the loop. We need to think about regional circularity, proximity principles. Why? Because also because of all the crises we have suffered, there is a bit of mistrust in the supply chain. We felt a lot of disruption. There is maybe an economic opportunity to rethink how to make the loop a bit closer. Innovative use of sustainable materials, yes, it's a driver for change, but it could also be a driver for attractiveness to the sector. We were talking about the lack of skill sets and workers. I mentioned we need to do more in bridging the gap between innovation and practice. That is for sure. Then someone mentioned it before, fair taxation, financial incentives. We need to trigger public authorities. We need to trigger EU citizens to also drive the demand on that side. And public procurement as a driver, yes, you're not without knowing that public procurement is being discussed a lot in Brussels. The fear we have is indeed there is this willingness to include more sustainability criteria in public procurement, great, but we need a balance between, let's say, between the reporting exercise that it might require, that sustainability requires a lot of collection of data, reporting on data, and not actually blocking the performance of construction companies. The targets, a few are already outdated, I believe.
Fernando,
But
I'm sorry to-
just to close with my very final word
Yes,
is
please.
that we really look forward to the implementation of the energy performance of building directive and the Fit for 55 package, the bioeconomy strategy that is going to be revised as well, because we really believe that bio-based materials are part of the solution to make our sector very different.
Okay, thank you. So I also would like to invite you to stay until the end. So you will see many overlapping parts as you presented. So I'm very happy to hear that we are well aware of the problem, but let's see if we can contribute to the solution at the same time. So now I will leave the floor to my colleague to introduce you our policy options. Berian, you are muted. Yes, now it's
Yes,
your turn.
I will share my screen. And put it in presenters mode. Yes, I'm here to introduce the policy ideas we have for the construction sector, which we would like to discuss with you today. So the focus here today is on discussing the different policy instruments that we propose, so new instruments not in place yet, and to discuss with you the strengths and weaknesses of the policies. Yes, and these policy ideas that we have, they are meant to inform policymakers what they can expect from certain policies and if they are implemented. We are also developing a survey about policies, which will also be circulated to you all. And there you can also much more pay more attention on what you prefer. But today we really want to discuss the strengths and weaknesses. So where did we look for policies? Well, we scanned, reviewed scientific articles and reports. We also, as 70% were 70 scientific articles were reviewed, and we had already in our former workshops a lot of stakeholder input also on policies. So here, most of that is about existing policies. We also tried to identify policy gaps there, and I saw the speakers also did that today, so that was very useful presentations about that. We are now focusing more on policy proposals, what can be new or what is not yet implemented. How did we select the policies? Well, that's not an easy task because you have so many policies already in place, policy fields, and they are also implemented in a way that they're all related. So it's quite a, let's say, a swamp if you go into that. So you need to structure that and prioritize what we want. So how did we do that? Well, we decided that we needed to develop a policy set, and that is guided by the type of policy instruments, and these can be direct regulation, like quotas, bans, thresholds, specific, and then you have the market-based instruments, which can be subsidies, taxes, emission trading, examples of that. The focus here is particularly on the hard policy instruments and not on the soft instruments, like voluntary instruments. We're not saying they're not important, but the focus was more on these hard instruments. And then you can also classify instruments according to function, because in this circular bioeconomy, we have two functions, two goals, which is promote transition. And also from the former presentations, it's very clear that there is really a strong need for transition. And there is a goal of limiting resource use. And that was also, I think the speakers also made that really very clear already. Regarding the limit of resource use, well, this is really clearly stated in the Circular Economy Action Plan that speaks about decoupling economic growth from resource use and keeping resource consumption within planetary boundaries, especially reducing the consumption footprint. Well, this is regarding the limiting of the resource use. This is not an easy task because we have this rebound effect, which has been proven, and that is that if we increase the recycling rate, it does not necessarily lead to a reduction of material consumption. Actually, the resource use just continues. So they're actually influencing each other, but in a negative way. And that is the circular economy rebound, and which is really a challenge. The other aspect is about the biomass use. Of course, there is this need to use more bio-based materials. That's in the construction sector needed, but at the same time in many other fossil-intensive sectors, of which the energy sector is most, is very large, and this comes back every time. So if we move to a more bio-based economy, it means that we will need to focus on more challenging biomass resources. So the residual and waste biomass resources have a low carbon footprint, but the more biomass we're going to use, the more virgin biomass resources are needed. And there we risk that we will have additional greenhouse gas emissions, and that would actually go against our target of also climate mitigation, which is a very core reason why we are having this transition. So that's challenging. And so back to the policy set. So promote transition is promote recycling, promote bio-based products. Limit resource involves reducing consumption, limiting, reallocating biomass. Yes, also we decided to develop two different policy sets here in the project. One policy set is focused more on circularity, and the other policy set is focused on biomass and greenhouse gas reduction. So these two policy sets I'm now going to present to you in terms of instruments that we have in mind to recommend. It is important to understand that these are only recommendations. So for options, so it's a toolkit, but it's not a definite recommendation. Then there's policies with the focus. I already said that we have a focus on hard and binding policies, and additional measures will be necessary. So it's not that we're proposing this is it, and there's but we did focus on these hard policy instruments. Many details still need to be specified. So what we propose are archetypes of policies, and we tried to develop a set of policies that are interrelated. So that is also how we ask you to look at what we proposed. So now I come to what policy options we propose for the construction sector. Well, first to summarize the challenges, and I think they were excellently already presented by the former speakers, is that currently there's insufficient regulatory support for bio-based construction products. Regulations are primarily designed for geo-based materials, creating an inequity in the standards and treatments. Current fire safety regulations restrict actually timber-based constructions. There's also still low rates of reuse, repair, recycling in the building material and demolition practices, large dependency on fossil resources, and a lack of uniformity in environmental product declarations across different EU countries. So in this light, the first for the promotion of transition, we propose the eco-design criteria for building companies on design, construction, and use of materials. The aim should be to design for reuse, disassembly, physical durability, adaptability, and repair, and minimizing material intensity. This on the demolition side, we think that the standards could be improved in relation to requirements for demolition of buildings that increase the chances for reuse, upcycling, recycling of materials, and encourage waste reduction and possibly refurbishment. This, of course, should go together with innovation subsidy for innovative circular technologies or practices. We could consider material tax on the use of virgin raw materials for construction, and also including also covering the imports. If we look at the policy set for biomass, the first could be to set quota for the use of bio-based and recycled materials in new buildings, including higher targets for public procurement. Well, the speakers all mentioned this, I think, so that is also in line. Then, of course, we have to really work on the sustainability criteria. If we set quotas, targets, then we have to really understand what are the sustainability criteria for bio-based construction materials. Well, we could learn a lot of the EU Renewable Energy Directive and develop in line with the experience that we have there, maybe a renewable material directive. And also subsidy for refurbishment for buildings could be considered. Again, also on this side, there is absolutely a big need for innovation subsidy for development and use of innovative bio-based construction materials. And there could be on the carbon, there could on the one hand be a carbon tax and on the other hand a carbon credit. The carbon tax should focus on all life cycle greenhouse gas emissions of the building material sector that are not part of the current carbon pricing, the EU ETS 1 and 2, because it should not overlap, including the carbon content of short life biomass materials. And for the carbon credit, of course, and that was also already mentioned by former speakers, is bio-based building materials that ensure long-term storage of carbon. Yeah, we mentioned 50 years, but I saw that the former speaker was talking about 35 years. That's for sure. I mean, would be good to hear your ideas about that during our next discussion. Yes, now I hand over to Valentina to present the Miro board and ask you to provide your feedback. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barian. So just a quick note, if you have any questions for the speakers, previous speakers, or for Barian also, feel free to raise your hand, write them in the chat, and we will go through it after the presentation of the Miro board. So I will put in the chat a link so you can directly enter into the Miro board. In the meantime, Beren, if you can stop sharing, I'll ask Luis to share the Miro board with you.
Sorry.
You will see the Miro board shared directly here in Zoom, but you can click on the link I sent you in the chat, and you can directly work on the Miro board. So we will just zoom in specific contribution, but please work directly in the Miro board, opening it on your PC. So Luis, I will give you the word just to quickly explain how to technically use the Miro, and then we will go through our request to participate.
Okay, so I think most of you know Miro. Anyway, Miro is a collaboration platform where you can use the sticky notes in order to add your contents. So you will see that there are some sticky notes. Then Valentina will tell you what the different color means. You can take the sticky note and put it where you want to put your content, double click and write your content. In order to zoom, you can use the wheel of the mouse to zoom on the board. If you don't have a mouse, you can use the panel, the zoom tool in the bottom right. And in order to move within the board, you can use the right button of the mouse. And I think this is about it.
Thank you, Luis. So if you have specific questions, please feel free to ask also on the usage of Miro board, even if I think that most of you are already familiar with the system. Also, if you prefer to write in the chat or intervene, kindly raise your hand or write directly your contributions. So what we are asking in the first part of this interactive discussion is to really, for each policy options that Beren presented, is to indicate, in your opinion, which are the weaknesses with the red post-it and the strengths with the green post-it around the specific policy options. So the weaknesses and strengths, you think these specific policy options also inserted in the context of the policy set Beren presented has. These weaknesses and strengths could be in terms of, you will see some criteria in terms of effectiveness, how are the policies substantially boosting the transitions? In terms of administration, how difficult and costly is to implement such policy option? The costs for businesses and consumers, but also in terms of public budget, the legal barriers. So if there are existing laws that may impede or restrict using a specific policy option, in terms of acceptance. So if you think that a specific policy option may encounter resistance in consumers, industries, businesses, whatever, or if you have instead other weaknesses or strengths that you see for a specific policy instrument. You will see that there is also a yellowish post-it sticky note. So you can use this specific color to indicate if you have specific recommendations related to the specific policy option. For example, I think that this policy option is good. However, I would couple with different policy options compared to the one you presented in your policy set, let's say. This is just an example, but each recommendation you may have on a specific policy option are more than welcome. So I think that's all. Varian, I don't know if you want to add something, or you can, start working on the Miro. And if you have questions, comments, please also raise your hands, use the chat, whatever is okay for us. So I see that there is already activity going on in the Miro.
In the meantime, if people have questions, we can also discuss them.
Yeah, I think you can take the floor, Buntan. Please go ahead.
Yes, I just want to add a little bit earlier to my presentation. I think I go a bit quite fast because I want to, respect the times. But I have listened to the presentation that you just mentioned earlier on the policy recommendations. It's very interesting. And one thing I might just want to add on that is the policy, the regulations that I mentioned on the new buildings, whole life cycle calculations. Of course, we understood that other colleagues from DG Climate, for example, is working on the COCF, so the carbon removal certification framework. And one thing that I think we are all agree already is to make both initiatives as consistent as much as possible from one to the other. Of course, for the new buildings, we have to tackle the reductions of the emissions, and from the COCF, we should focus more on how to store the emissions. I heard a lot about also from some speaker about the renovations. I totally agree that when we look at the building stock, the renovation is still some things that we need also to do, not only just for the new buildings. Just to give you from our point of view is we are focused right now on the new constructions, not because we don't want to tackle also the renovations, but also because we kind of understand also the difficulty if we put too much administrative burdens on the renovations. It sometimes can be counterproductive, I might say. But of course, any suggestions we are welcomed, and me as personally, I'm looking forward to see from your side. Yes, and maybe I just want to add a little bit more on this also regarding the two regulations that I just mentioned. So the one on the life cycle calculations for new buildings and the ones on the COCF. So I think it's maybe more related on the demand side, I might say. We try to boost the demand for a sustainable solutions. But I think there's also many other initiatives at the European levels. Of course, the example that we have today, funded by Horizontal Europe, is to see from the policy point of view what can be done. Can we do better, I might say. But I think knowing the importance of this topic, I hope that there's going to be more support on this, and related to what you just mentioned regarding to support the innovations. I think that we are totally agree on that. It's just that one of the questions that I may have is what kind of supports that may be the most relevant. I mean, there's a ready solutions to be deployed. There are solutions that are already but not massified yet. So what I kind of looking forward to see also from this study, maybe I should look a bit forward after that. But what are the main things that we can really improve the deployment of those solutions for the consumer in a massified way, I might say. While considering, of course, all the necessary safety measure, fire, and among other stuff, and also affordable, because this is one of the issues that we from the commissions are looking forward very, very much on right now. Thank you so much.
So thank you very much, Kunsan. I don't know if our moderators in the meantime, I saw some activities that are going on in the Miro board.
Yes,
if you want to ask a specific, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, someone posted a recommendation under biomass and limited resource use, specifically mentioning that a reluctance to use recycled materials or bio-based solutions. I'm not sure if the person who posted this could maybe say a little bit more about it, and maybe also talk a little bit about specifically maybe like the recycled materials or like reuse of materials, because indeed this is something that's a bit new and uncertainties are still remain around it. Maybe if this person also has some suggestions themselves or would like to go a little bit deeper into this.
Yes, feel free to speak up. I know it's not easy for people that maybe are working on the Miro to
Maybe on
listen
another
and
topic, if I
yeah.
may, on another topic, there's an opportunity to respond to a call for evidence and a public consultation on the evaluation of the public procurement directives. That is currently open until tomorrow, actually. So there, as EPF, we will provide a response and calling for further support for bio-based materials and products into public procurement. I will put the link into the chat, and I invite you to give your contribution.
Great, thank you. All the materials will be shared later on with the participants also. So not only for our, let's say, project colleagues, but also for the participants at the workshop. So thank you, Alexis.
I think there's an interesting comment that in relation to the innovation subsidy. And it says to promote the health and property benefits of bio-based solutions that convince through unique performance rather than sustainability elements. Yeah, the person that that put it is still typing, but I think it is quite clear that actually if you put more emphasis on the positive aspects, properties of these bio-based materials, that may be more effective than only pushing the sustainability aspects.
Yes, this would be me, because we know several examples where, especially with regard to toxicity, they perform way better. With regard to fire resistance, they perform way better. For specific climates, they are way more suitable. So I think just clearly getting away from the sustainability elements that are sometimes also just in the construction area, I feel also a hindering element, because people tend to think that they perform lower, just convinced through sheer facts when it comes to performance.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Well, there is a challenge which I want to bring in the discussion, and that is happening in several places in Europe, but we see it a lot in the Netherlands because we have an enormous we are enormously behind with building houses. There's an enormous pressure on the housing market, and we are very slow actually in developing these new houses. And our minister said that she wants to reduce the pressure of legislation and the requirements that are put on the building sector, so that it becomes more easy to build. And actually this transition aim that actually is putting more rules on the sector makes it more difficult. Or do you think it doesn't work like that? Because the rules just increase with this aim for transition.
I think then maybe regulations need to provide incentive to transition by, for example, prioritizing publicly funded public buildings or social construction or something, and make clear that these companies that offer solutions in this field are prioritized and will be preferably selected.
That could be an instrument, and also through public procurement. So they give an example to the rest of the building activities. Yeah.
And there is also,
yeah,
there is a comment about the outreach to small companies on the left side. Valentina, if you can go on the left side, the market-based instruments. Maybe the person that wrote this comment can maybe provide some ideas on how to improve this. Like the challenge is to reach to smaller construction companies in these innovation subsidies. So do you think that the requirements to get the subsidies are, could be too complicated, for example? Are you talking about, for example, administrative burdens, or maybe the expert would like to say more about these challenges? And this is also linked a little bit to the other challenge on the left side still, about the skill also of the workers. Maybe also for smaller companies can also be more complicated in a way to update constantly the skills of the workers as well. So maybe these are similar challenges that can be, we can discuss a bit what potential solution to overcome this challenge could be.
I think this comment came from Fernando.
Okay.
Because he explained, of course, to us that the sector is that so many small companies are actually making up the sector, which is quite a challenge because then you have to reach many people. But
if I may add, one
yes.
of the difficulties we have in this situation is that seeing it from a Brussels perspective, just to give you, first of all, skills and training are not a European competence. So which means that to provoke a change, it has to happen at the national level. But in many cases, it is at a regional level. So the difficulty there is to convince at the most local level on what would be a way forward to train and first of all, to attract people, to train them. Because those vet centers, those training facilities also have a lot of other challenges than just thinking about updating their curriculum. And although we can provide a bit of guidance, they have massive difficulties in actually showing to what extent construction is a sector where you can develop a long-standing career. So there isn't a lack of interest necessarily in certain topics. I mean, younger generations and most of the events of our national members are now directed to the Generation Z, I think they're called, so around 20 years. The difficulty is that after they figure out that most of the reality in construction goes beyond this willingness to make it more sustainable. I mean, certain tasks will remain very close to what they are today. They might perform for a certain period in the sector, but not stay there because they find they're very attracted by the sustainability narrative. Okay, construction has its limits there as well. So it is a bit of, yes, this difficulty to really update the training curricula, this difficulty to really attract the people, and then when you manage the difficulty to keep them on board so that they keep being innovative in this sector. So here, one of the things we are trying to push is for a better level of dialogue between local construction companies, local workers representatives, and the representatives of vet centers at local level, so that there isn't such a big mismatch between what they are being taught at school and what actually is required by the companies, because today we're still at that level, on top of the fact that we don't have, again, the numbers. I don't know if I'm responding to your
Yes.
fully to your question, but
No, definitely.
this is a bit the context in which we're evolving on the skills and competences.
So they need to invest more on vet institution, maybe to provide them also some resources to update their own courses, because maybe sometimes, as you say, they don't have the time to update the program that they offer. And this one is, of course, complicated. It's also like, as you said, there is also a need to have more interaction between the vet school. They need to really provide courses that meet the needs of the companies, and the needs are evolving based on the regulations and based on different criteria. So I think this mismatch should be like a gap that should be somehow identified and solved. Thank you.
There's also an interesting comment on the eco-design criteria is that holistic concepts are needed. As circularity is not only about the materials, but also about concepts like logistics, collection, and infrastructure. And I think that is a really very valuable remark indeed. And we tend to discuss only the material side of it, but it's the whole chain of activities. Yeah.
Yes, this would be me again, unfortunately. But I feel that this is one of the most challenging parts when it comes to bio-based materials, that we need close cooperation with also local infrastructure and local facilities in different fields to allow it to be feasible and actually manageable in the first place.
Very good. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt the discussion. I just wanted to open, if you may have noticed, there is a hidden panel in our Miro board in the bottom part. So I will now make it visible. You can continue, of course, inserting weaknesses, strengths, and recommendations in the circularity and biomass fact sheets with policy options above. But in the meantime, if you have other policy options to suggest to be included in our fact sheets, please, this is the space to do it. So we are collecting also other suggestions from you. You will see a couple of other policy options that were found basically with our literature research, but please feel free also to fill in this specific panel. And you can go ahead with the rest and with your discussion.
I think there's an interesting comment about the carbon credit subsidy. And this comment says that it's a barrier to ensure that more 50 years of storage of carbon is followed, is that you have to really follow this 50 years in time. And that can be very bureaucratic. Yes, I can imagine that is complicated. Maybe there are people in the workshop that have ideas about how this can be efficiently followed up, checked, monitored.
Maybe if I may say, as I mentioned during my presentation, the carbon removal certification framework has entered into force already. So the overall legislation, they're working on the delegated and implementing acts, namely on, as I mentioned, the methodology to calculate carbon removals into harvested wood products to use in construction, and the lifespan that is currently in the legislation is 35 years. And yes, there will be administrative burden and costs for the monitoring of the whole lifespan of the materials. Mm-hmm. But it is a voluntary scheme. So it's for the project holders to, if they want to showcase carbon stored in their building, it has advantages for real estate owners and so, but it's not very clear. There will be a registry, there will be a third-party verification schemes. It will come with a cost, but it has advantages as well. It will be also an opportunity to offset emissions. Of course, the main target should always be to reduce emissions, but yeah. So we know that the Commission will present the draft very soon, hopefully in the next expert group on carbon removals. But we were told it would be the case, but I haven't seen the agenda yet.
Mm-hmm. You say it's a voluntary scheme, but I can imagine that it's actually cities, city councils, I mean, local authorities can make it an obligatory scheme if they want. For example, for public buildings that have procurement. So for you put it as a EU authority as a voluntary scheme, but At local, national, regional level, it could be different.
Indeed, there are initiatives at local level, but I only work at EU level. So
yeah, yeah. But it's still the thing is, what I heard from the speakers that we had is that it's too much voluntary at this moment. So because of that, there's maybe not a fast transition.
Well, it will all depend on the level of incentives that will be provided.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, more incentives could lead to more bio-based products, wood-based products into construction. That would be great. But there are also other type of dangers with the carbon removal certification frameworks. Within the framework, especially of biomass used for carbon capture and storage, it is essential that the sustainability criteria and the cascading principle are respected. Otherwise, we will see a steep increase in demand for biomass to be captured and stored, and without having the opportunity to use it for materials first.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe that point might support our suggestion. Let me lead you through it. In the circularity fact sheet, where we talk about the market-based instrument limiting resource use, maybe if you can just elaborate on that, that can maybe the fitting point to our suggestions. So set of suggestions, let's say.
If I understand correctly, you want me to write it down on the...
Yeah, if you can comment on it, or if you prefer writing down, that would be nice for us. I mean, we will also complete the Miro board later on with all the comments at the same time. So whatever is easier for you.
Okay.
I see comment for in relation to sustainability criteria for biomass. It says promoting renewable materials in a dynamic building life cycle. And I'm really anxious to hear what is exactly meant with a dynamic building life cycle. Not, I think the person who put this is too busy with putting many valuable comments in our Miro reports. But we will continue. We will try to get more information about that in our work.
Barian, I think we are near the end, so please, if anybody has a specific comment, an urgent issue that you want to discuss, this is, I think, the moment, because afterwards we will close the workshop. So please, if you have something you would like to share with us, it's your moment.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed, I'm a bit curious to know more about the additional suggestions. So let me read it on the Miro. For the person who put it, do you think we didn't cover this aspect? Make the green requirements mandatory for public procurement or incentives for building sector. So can you comment on it a little bit in order to complement our suggestions if you see some point missing, or is this something just another aspect of the problem to it?
this was me, Susanna, and I'm referring to two different dimensions. One, in the Pronto project, we investigated with some public procurement entities in Italy, and they said that they are gradually introducing these minimum green requirements for public procurement. And this is a very strong statement because, of course, at least for the entire public procurement, we can set a rule. And of course, all the biomaterials are one of this part. Particularly, I'm referring to insulation in countries like Italy, in which if you use bio-based material, you have a good performance also with in summer rather than just in winter. And the second dimension is when there are, like there was last years in Italy, a support for the construction sector to put as mandatory to be able to apply for this public support against some minimum green requirements that, of course, also requires the capacity building for the entire value chain, in particular the architects and the builders. But this is a great leverage, and we have a good example of failure in Italy because this was not done, and now there are many houses that are having problems in humidity or in bad performance in summer because they used basically plastic materials, and so nothing that is good for summer and rather than only for winter insulation. So now there is a big problem in Italy because legislation was applied in the wrong way.
Thanks, Susanna. I think we can move to the conclusions now, but I also want to underline that this activity might take more time from your side, of course, to reflect on the things that we proposed. So we will keep the Miro board open for another week. So if you feel like contributing, please visit the Miro board again. And if you find some colleagues that could be also useful for us to collect inputs, insights, please also share this link with them. We would be very happy to receive your contributions. And this is the final workshop of the conferences. We will have a final closing conference for the Implement series that is going to be on the 21st of March. I would like to also invite you to that event in order to see what we collected for each case study sector, and then we will come up with more comprehensive proposals, let's say, for the policy options. And finally, this was only to understand the strengths and weaknesses of the policy options. But at the same time, we want to understand which policy works better in your sector in comparison with the other ones. So we will organize a survey, and then we will share it with you in order to collect your preference over the others. So please stay tuned with us for the upcoming events as well. And I think this is all from our side. We thank you all again for joining us and staying until the end. And we look forward to your contributions again for the upcoming activities. Have a good day ahead. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Again, for the
Goodbye.
invitation. Bye-bye.